Welcome, Agile friends. My name is Vasco Duarte, and I'm hosting this session with our amazing speaker, Bao Tran. Hey, Bao, welcome to the summit.
Hi, Vasco. Hello, everybody. This is a fantastic summit and love to be involved in this.
Absolutely, and we love to have you involved as well because we're going to talk about a topic using your product's IP, intellectual property, to grow the value of both your business but also your product and your company. And this is a very important topic, of course, for product owners. Bao is a pioneer tech entrepreneur, patent innovator, and he has founded PowerPatent and Aspire Health, blending AI, blockchain, and healthcare advancements, and also has a very rich academic background in law, business, and engineering. Now, we'll talk with Bao in a minute. I do want to remind everybody that we do have many other sessions on the Product Owner Summit this year that touch on how to grow your business. In fact, we have a whole track focused on designing products for growth. So check that out at productownersummit.org. But now let's dive into the topic of today. Now, Bao, we're going to talk about how to use the product's intellectual property to grow the business, the product itself, and the company. But before that, I mean, you've worked for many years in patent law, but you didn't really start with law or patents. So how did you end up working with patents in the first place?
Well, I have a long-winded story, but the short of it was I went into undergraduate in engineering. I love engineering. And then the fourth year, I got seduced by Wall Street. And I went up to New York, got my MBA up there. And then I did a stint in strategic planning at Pfizer Pharmaceutical. And then I became a management consultant, helping tech companies, really. And then my mother had a stroke, so I went back to help her. And then I had extra time and I added a law degree. I figured I was going to be a corporate lawyer. But then people look at my background and says, you know, you are an ideal person for patent law. And 20 years ago, patent law was a boutique space. You know, they think of geeks that go into lawyer, right? And so it was very, very niche. Today, of course, it's a sexy space and everybody's, you know, pouring into it. But I started when it was viewed as a it's really geek lawyers, really. But we love the technology. I had the fortune of working with Compact when it first got started. So I patented if you remember those lunchable laptops, you know, those are like, you know, this size, right? And then I saw it evolve and evolve and evolve. So I had that experience working with a company that grew big and became public. And then eventually I loved, you know, kind of the scenery out in the West Coast. So I moved out to Silicon Valley. And there I worked with Adobe and a bunch of other companies, software companies. And then eventually one of my client was a small company that raised Series A funding from Kleiner Perkin. And that was the company that made the Invisalign product. And, you know, they saw that I was, you know, fairly, you know, energetic. So I guess they hired me in as their associate general counsel. So I architected the entire Invisalign patent portfolio. And I have a lot of interesting stories to tell you about how software and, you know, how, you know, things evolve and things that you didn't expect to be valuable turn out to be very valuable. And after that, I stayed with Align is great, but you know it's like Google. It's a one company product. And so after a while, I decided, oh, I'm interested in in helping a variety of companies. And so I became a small angel investor, and as part of that, I help companies set up their patent portfolio and and how to defend their go-to-market strategy and then how to use that to argue to venture investors that, hey, my company is actually worth more because, you know, I've spent some money in building up my portfolio, and that portfolio has to have some value. So that's kind of one of the message I want to tell people in this video is that, hey, patent is not an expense. It's actually an asset that you invest in, and that asset not only returns into you the money back into you, but it also protects you from future competition. And I have lots of stories to tell because over the 20 years experience, I've seen a lot of interesting dynamics in this space. And so that's kind of a very brief summary of how I got here.
And of course, the of course interesting thing is the eclectic journey that you went through. But one thing that you mentioned already in your story is that there's a lot of value in our products that we could unlock with simple strategies. So, what are some of these simple things that all the product owners listening to us today could already start looking at and potentially finding treasure troves of value in the products that they have and could benefit from, not only from defensive perspective, of course, that's part of it, but also in terms of creating new value, right? Like maybe even reshaping how the product is perceived in the market.
Oh, absolutely. So I have one story that's very interesting. Most people find it fascinating. So I don't know, if you're familiar with the Invisalign, it's a computer-generated orthodontic product where they scan your teeth. They create a 3D model of your teeth, and then they create an animation of how your teeth should move from the start point to the finish point, so that your teeth is now straight, right? Conventionally, you have to use a wire, the brace, and that wire is painful to wear and it's not so aesthetic. So the founder of the company, Zia Chishti, had this idea where you can take the traditional retainer product and then create a 3D model that applies small bits of pressure to your teeth, one retainer at a time. So that's called a sequence, a retainer. So you can go to, you can search up Invisalign by now. It's a public company, so it's a very common product. But anyway, the technology has all sorts of, the product has all sorts of technology embedded into it. So you can imagine there is 3D cap technology, dental cap technology in there. Yeah, you can imagine that it has 3D printed products. So in the year 2000, Align was the largest 3D printed producer in the world. Because they were, making these hundreds of these stages to move probably tens of thousands of people's teeth. So they have all of these interesting bits of technologies going on. There's computer, CAD modeling. There's computer fabrication technology. There's also dental scanning technology. All of that, right? So you can say, "Oh, I'm in a wealth of technology." But the one thing that's very interesting is there was one thing that we saw that we said, "Hey, you create all these series of retainers, but if people don't know which one to wear in the correct sequence, this product would be useless." So a very simple patent idea, but yet extremely valuable, was to claim 3 or more of these computer fabricated retainers with a sequence indication thereon. So, and without this, despite all the fancy 3D scanning and 3D modeling and all of that mechanical fabrication technology, the end product wouldn't work. So, and that patent actually was litigated, and it kept out a number of entrants into the space until the patent expired about maybe a few years ago. So that to me was a very potent example of something so simple. And yet, if you claim it correctly, it's tied to your product. Yet no one can find prior art to kill the patent. Imagine you have a patent that says 3 devices with a sequence number on it. That's it. That's extremely broad. That's almost as broad as the one-click patent by Amazon, right? And yet that thing, nobody could kill it during litigation because it was cleverly crafted to tie it to your particular business output. So in that case, Align was the very first to generate these computer fabricated retainers that apply pressure to your teeth. So you'd say, I claim 3 or more of these things with a sequence indication. That's extremely simple, and yet that
And
patent
not even very complicated at all, right? Like,
yeah.
and one of the things that strikes me in this story and other stories that we'll probably get into as we go through the interview is that there's a lot of value in even very seemingly mundane and small things that our product does. And if we don't have that perspective, if we don't have the perspective of finding where is the value, then we cannot take advantage of it. And I know, for example, many people worry about others copying our product, which is a real thing. Of course, it can happen, as you just described. We can use patents as a defensive mechanism for that. But we often don't think about how to use other products to build something more valuable on top. And you have a story to tell us about the battery modules, where there was something that was already there, and then it was what was built on top that actually provided the value. Tell us that story, Bao.
That was one of my investment called Micronaut Inc. And their idea was originally to take well, in California, I'm not so sure about where you are, but in California we have an electricity pricing scheme where where the electricity pricing is increased if you cross particular threshold. So the more you use, the higher you get charged. So for businesses, when they come in on the first day, when they turn on their equipment, they have a surge. That surge then is tracked by the electricity company, and they say the rest of the period you are charged at that surge pricing, even though that's only for a few seconds. So what this company did was to get a big pack of battery to act as a counter reserve. So in the morning when you power them up, the battery would supply the surge current, and that would then keep your electricity costs low. So that certainly is a good business model. It's to save client money, right? And with software and a battery storage system. Now, then what they did was they said, well, hey, if we have thousands of these across a particular city, those thousands of battery could easily be commanded to inject energy into the grid when there's a brownout. So they took that concept, they added in this thing, and they negotiated a deal with our electric utility and saying, hey, we're going to supply you with surge power on demand if you give us a contract for X million dollars a year. And so so it saved the utility a lot of money, because building a brand new power plant is expensive, right? They only need power temporarily to inject into the grid when there's a brownout. And so that's an example of how you start from one business and then you start. It's not a pivot, because they didn't change the model; they just added on to the model.
And for me, the cool thing about this story is that it is about seeing what's there, and then imagining what if, adding something, and then of course then taking that additional, which in this case was a software module on top of the batteries. The batteries were already in place, so what can we do? We can build a software to manage them, of course, and then you can use that to extract even more value, because not only can you grow the business because you're selling electricity out, but now you can patent this and you can sell this to others that will potentially do the same with their battery modules.
Exactly. And so that's the value of patent, because if you find out that, let's say you have a patent that you are unable to completely utilize, you can then find people that are compatible with you, and then you can license them, and then you get free revenue. They do all the work. That's the beauty. That's the monetization beauty of IP.
And when you look at it that way, we start to realize that the products we build have the product themselves, what the product does, and then also the IP product that comes from the real product. And that IP product, as you said, can be licensed and therefore increase the business and eventually grow the company as well.
Exactly. And so we encourage people, when they patent, spend a few more minutes to think a little bit more outside the box. Say, well, who else could use this? So, don't just patent what you do, but then spend a few more minutes thinking, okay, how else could this be used? And that's going to increase your value of the asset tremendously.
And let's talk through that a little bit, Bao, because I know that you have even in your own company, you have ways to help people figure out what is patentable, and then coming up with potentially even fileable patent filings, or almost fileable, almost ready patent filings. But let's first start about, if I'm a product owner and I'm thinking, okay, where is the value in my product that I could use IP to extract, or IP law to extract? Where should they start? What are the things they could look at? What type of questions they can ask themselves?
Absolutely. So it's a multi-stage process. So stage one is when you come in and you build a foundation, right? And actually, that's the most interesting stage, because that's where all the new innovations are made. And then after you stage one, you're going to have new version one of the product, version two of the product, etc. And so those things are protecting the incremental improvement. But that's not to say that the incremental improvements aren't valuable. They're just, more, gears turning. And then, and sometime when you improve to a certain point and you hit that nice spot, and all of a sudden you see your sales just takes off. So incremental patents are also valuable, but I'll discuss the two stages. So the first stage, when I come in and I help a startup, what I do is I say, okay, well, let's lay the foundation. So let's take a look at your software. And let's say, what are the major features that it performs that you don't want other people to be able to advertise? So then from there, we hone in based on what you tell your investors and your customers, what are the unique selling point for your product. We will then identify what are the software codes that provide that particular features, right? So that's how we can just systematically identify the points that we can patent, right? So then we create an inventory of things that possibly we could protect, right? And then we prioritize that by saying, hey, okay, which is the most important, right? And if there's a lot of them, we may describe them all into a big bundle. And then we use a strategy where we file that bundle. And so inside of a bundle, you might have, let's say, 5 different inventions. So let's hypothetically think of a car. In a car, you're going to have an engine invention. You're going to have entertainment, your radio invention. You might have heat seaters. You might have, I don't know, electric charging system, whatever. So those innovations, what we do is our strategy is we combine them all into a big jumbo application. We know that we're going to have to split that jumbo out into 5 different cases. But now imagine that we have a jumbo application that describes all your innovation features, right? Then what we do is we would then customize each of that jumbo with the claim to invention. So for example, if you have a car seat invention, we're going to have a set of claim to your car seat. If you have an engine invention, we're going to have a set of claim to your engine. And so you can see now I'm building a house with a lot of vertical claims, right? And what I do is I take that jumbo application, that jumbo shared body, and I file 5 parallel pieces. I have now but each case with a different set of claims. So case number 1 would have the jumbo body, and it will have the engine claim, for example. And case number 2 might be the same jumbo body, but now it has the charging idea, for example. So why am I doing that? When I do it like that, I know that my cases are going to be spread out to 4 or 5 different examiners, right? And statistically, what we will have is you have a bell curve. You're going to have some examiners that you can work with. You're going to have some examiner you can't work with. And then you can after the first pass and you see who you're assigned to, then you can figure out who to work with and who can change, who you can focus on, and then get patents out easily that way. So in a way, it's a way of optimizing your flow. So we have done a lot of these tricks over the 20 years we've done to help you expedite and get you the patents that you need. So so I've kind of discussed the laying of the foundation. Now what happened is within a year, you're going to have these new features or new pivot points whatsoever. And then what do you do? And so what you do then is every single time you have a new product announcement, for example, you should then sit down, think about it, and say, hey, in this new product release, I have some new features. Are those features something that I don't want my competitors to be able to say they can do? And if you think those are features that are important enough, then you create a new applications for those features. And so that's how you see in a company's life, you can see that it kind of tracks the companies, the way where they change and where they move to. So those are the 2 typical phases of life that I see. First is laying the foundation, and second is periodically updating and polishing that foundation.
Yeah, and as we think about this, of course, you're thinking about it in a structured manner, as you would, because you have both a technical and a law background. So you would think about it that way. But sometimes we're when we're kind of in the middle of growing a company and developing a product, we just simply don't have time, right? Like we get stuck in the doing of the work. We don't have time to stop and think about it. And I know that you've been working on a solution for that. Like so, for those of us who might think that okay, I do have something that is worth patenting, whether it is for defensive purposes or just expanding the business, much more likely to add value to the product. What can they do? How can they, at the same time be busy with the product development while doing the patent filing, which is not necessarily fast or easy process either?
But that's where our new friend AI comes into. So we are not just patent lawyers. We actively know software. And so what we did was we started playing with GPT-2 technology about 4 years ago. And then recently we migrated. So one of the efforts I'm launching, a company is called PowerPatent. And what it does is it applies the power of AI to generate from your basic idea a almost full level application. And so you can tell it, okay, you can give it an invention disclosure, as we call it, a two-pager. You dump it into it, it will automatically take that and generate a structure of a patent application. And then you can look at it very quickly and you can say, oh yeah, you refine it, right? But we don't recommend that you become patent lawyers with this tool. This tool, the value of it is that it structures what you think is interesting. In a few minutes, it will give you a 30-page patent, a filing ready document, but we don't recommend that you file that. We recommend that you have multiple eyes of review. So what you do is you generate it using AI first, and then you review it with your team, quick review, and then you think, okay, this is pretty good. Then you send it out to a firm to file it for you, to review it and file it for you. And then you'll tell the lawyer, say, hey, I've done most of the work for you. I know it's not 100%, but it's probably between 60 to 70%. Give me a 60% discount on this. And I just want to pick your brain for your expertise in how to make this thing pass the patent office. The technology I've already described, right? So that's the way we recommend we use a new AI tool is don't blind, it's like a machine gun. If you take it and you file it yourself, it's very dangerous, right? But if you use it strategically, it's going to help you build your patent very cost effectively. Our software costs only $4.99 a month to use, so it's extremely cheap, right? But if you use this to cut off, if you use the result to do just one application, a typical application worldwide average is around $10,000, right? If you just use this for a few minutes, and you save yourself, well, let's see, $4,000 or $5,000, actually probably more than that. It's a great deal. And the beauty.
And the way you're describing it, it also comes to my mind that we can also use it as a way to validate, like, do I have enough information here? Will there be many gaps if I transform this into a patent? We can even iterate the patent application through that, right?
Exactly. And that's how the power of AI should be applied. It should be a co-pilot. It shouldn't replace you, right? But it makes you more efficient and lean. And so, and you can use this with, I notice you're an expert in lean methodology, right? You can use this along with your development when come across the point, a transition point, and where you say, hey, this thing is almost there and it's pretty good. Take that information and take your internal documentation, dump it into the AI. AI will then generate a patent-ready format for you in about 10 minutes. You review it, you're gonna probably spend another hour to clean it up. You send it out to your outside counsel, and boom, you're done, right? And very cost-effective, yet a great way of...
And a great way to test out if we have patents that could actually work, right? Like, for example, if we already have a counselor in the company that can help us through that, we can iterate through different patent ideas and unlock value from our products.
Exactly. And what you can even do is you can file, at least in the US, they call provisional applications. So they're a placeholder. They're very inexpensive. You can just take the output of this software and just file it as they call it, a provisional application, an application that's basically not examined, but it's just queued in the patent office for a year. Within 1 year, you need to convert it to a real application. So what you do is in your lean methodology, in your rapid prototyping methodology, you might have over, let's say you do your product in 3 months, and you might have over those 3 months, let's say five distinct new concepts. You just file them on that day because globally what we have is called a first to file system. So whoever files first gets it. It's not who thought about it first. It's actually who file it, right? So you take these things, you file them very cheaply. The filing fee is like $300. You file them, and you then have, let's say, over a 3 month period, you have five of these things, right? And at the end of that, you can combine them all back into one big application, into one application, and then you shoot it over to your lawyer and you say, hey, give me a patent on this at the end of that 1 year period. So in effect, you don't even need a lawyer if you use this approach because you're just doing placeholder. And then what happened is you
You're
file these
creating an option, how do you say, an option portfolio for your patent.
exactly. Now you got something that's floating and you can build them very cheaply. So this is, our lean methodology for patent generation, kind of. It's
Absolutely.
I'm trying to learn from this product owner, your expertise, right?
So
So
we'll
that's
put
how
the
you should.
link to PowerPatent in the description below the video, so check it out. About we're close to the end, but of course, I'm sure there's many of our listeners and viewers who are interested in maybe exploring the topic further. Is there a resource that you could recommend for those that want to go deeper into the topic?
Sure, patent is actually a pretty arcane topic. It can fill volumes. But I think the more interesting thing is there's a book that I have that it's an old book. I don't know if you can read it, but it says it's The Wealth of Knowledge, Intellectual Capital in the 21st Century Organization. So that book kind of gives you the strategy behind this. But when you think about it, I mean, think, what's the value of McDonald's? It's not in the fryers or in the cooking equipment, right? It's in the brand. It's in the intellectual property. What's the value of Google? It's not in the buildings. It's in the people. And the people leave. So you want to capture that as IP, right? And so I like to, I like to encourage you guys to think more of this as an asset. And that's what that book is about. It's an asset because if you're in the software business, your most valuable asset is probably your people, but eventually those people leave, right? And so, and what's in their mind, they can take and go to the next company. So how do you preserve what you've innovated at your company in this age where high mobility, right? So the only way you control that is through patent, because otherwise, if you keep it as a trade secret, when people, with the high mobility that we have, and with this virtual work environment where you have a lot of consultant sourced all over the world, they come in and they build your product and they go on and they join another team. They're going to take that knowledge and they're going to do it for the other team. You have no control over this unless you have your IP. So, in my mind, software companies, their entire valuation is really in the IP. So this book talks a lot about how you think about IP as a strategic tool to grow your business.
Yeah, and
Um,
even grow new business lines like licensing, for example, right?
Absolutely. And I think the world's going to come to a point where companies are going to be so flexible that you might have your software that you can make it available for rental by other users and things like that. And so that it's a form of licensing. And so when you're in the licensing business, all the IP asset is important to show people who are licensing it, hey, you actually are licensing something tangible and valuable.
Absolutely. Bao, thank you very much for the lessons you've shared with our community. If people want to know more about you and the work that you're doing, where should they go?
Sure. For the software, you can go to powerpatent.com. And then I run a small boutique consulting, a law firm. And it's called Patent Professional Corporation. And the website is patentpc.com. So you can reach out to me there, or you can go to my LinkedIn profile as well.
Absolutely. And we'll put the link on the show notes to make sure that people can easily find those. And before we go, Bao, what's one last parting word of advice that you would like to leave our viewers with?
Um, well, I think, entrepreneurs, they work very hard, but I think, in my view, you also need to enjoy life. Take a few days off and enjoy life. So, for example, a few minutes before this call, I was looking and I saw this advertisement for class 5 rapid, and I kind of like, yeah, I gotta go. So I don't know if you ever seen a class 5, but it's like 5 feet drop, right? And you go and take these tours, and California, we're fortunate with all these river, and this year we have good snow, so that means that in between April through um, July, I think, June, probably end of June, you're going to have a torrential amount of water. And so it's going to be awesome. So go out. I worked my tail off. Last night I was up at 1 o'clock in the morning. And but then I just periodically I go like during midday and take off and go skiing just to kind of unleash that get your brain back into sharpness. So, my wife says, you're 60. So how come you're just running around like you're a kid? And I said, well, that's because I go out and I work hard, but I have fun, it's
Absolutely. Remember to take a break. That's a great parting word of advice. Thank you very much for your generosity with your time and your knowledge, Bao.
excellent. I love it. Good luck to everybody in the venture.